Hey there, welcome in. My name is Ryan. In this video, I'm going to be telling you my favorite 4-player games. Now, while many of my favorite games do technically work at the 4-player count, maybe you're like me in that you might not prefer all those games to be played at such a high player count because maybe they take too long at that point or they're complicated enough that there tends to be a lot of downtime on every single turn while you're waiting for the other players to make decisions. So this is not a list of my favorite games that can be played at 4 players, but my favorite games to play when I have 4 players. Now, I'm going to be giving you the games roughly in order of complexity. We're going to start with the simplest ones and end with the most complicated games. And also as we go along, I'll let you know which ones I also like maybe at 3 or 5 players as well. Up first here we have Trekking Through History. And Trekking Through History is a game where you are time travelers and you're going back and visiting historical events. To visit those historical events, basically you draft cards and get the rewards that's on those cards. You kind of want to keep the cards in chronological order if possible, and also find cards with the right rewards to basically fulfill your personal itinerary. The big point of interest in the game is that the cards you're visiting have a cost in hours. So everyone has 12 hours in their day to go visit these events. And every time you take a card, if it costs 2 hours, you're gonna move your little pocket watch forward twice. If it costs 4, you move it forward 4 times. And then not only do you only have that many hours in the day to work with, but also the player who's in the last position takes the next turn. And while Trekking Through History works well at any player count, it really shines as a light game to be played at the 4-player count. If you're looking for a game you can teach a new group that's pretty simple and maybe only take 45 minutes, it is great for that group because it offers you some cool decisions when you get to the higher player counts. Like I said, the player in the last position gets to go next. So you can really kind of choose. If I take a card that costs 5 hours, I could jump in front of all the 3 other players. There's going to be a lot of turns happening before I take my next turn. Or you can take a card that only costs 1 hour, so I'm going to move up 1 spot and then maybe go again. Up next here we have The Crew. And if you've watched my channel much before, you probably already know that I love The Crew. It takes a classic idea of trick taking where everyone has a hand of cards, you play a card and the high card of that color wins. It takes the idea and turns it into a cooperative game. If you've never played before, let me just tell you, it is absolutely awesome. Basically, all the players on the table are going to have a goal. Like maybe my goal is to win the blue 4. And then someone plays a blue 5 over there, and I play a green 7. Well, if you know how trick taking works, I have to play blue. But now you know I don't have blue. So then everyone on the table is cooperative and now thinking, okay, how are we going to give Ryan the blue 4, even though Ryan doesn't have any blues? But that's just one example. But there are so many interesting, fascinating things about The Crew. As you get into it, some really cool, unique missions, some really hard combinations of cards that went out there, and the group really has to come together and figure out how to make it work. Now, The Crew also works great at 3 players, and it kind of also works at 5 players, but just be aware it is really, really hard at 5 players, and you kind of have to use a special rule to make some of the missions possible at that player count, but I think it really, really shines at 3 and 4 players. Oh, and there are 2 versions of The Crew. One where you're exploring deep space, and one where you're exploring deep under the water. They're both excellent. All my comments really refer to either one. Up next here, we actually have another cooperative game, but I promise you it's going to feel completely different, and that game is Kitchen Rush. Kitchen Rush is an absolutely chaotic game where you're trying to get orders from customers, fill those orders by getting food and spices onto your plate, cooking that food, maybe going to the store and buying more supplies when you run out, but all of it's done in real time. So instead of saying, I want to take that action there, you're going to get a sand timer and flip it over on that action. So you're going to have moments where everyone wants to cook and everyone's going to be putting their sand timers on the oven spot. So it's cooperative and you're trying to figure out how you can get as many orders in and completed as possible while making sure you get them all done before the time in the round runs out. Also making sure you don't run out of things like no more bread or no more cheese. Now, like many gamers, there aren't tons of games that I like that use sand timers or use a countdown for the round, but in Kitchen Rush, it's implemented absolutely perfectly because you feel that chaos of a kitchen. If you're trying to get all these orders done before the end of the round, you're trying to make this much money. If you don't pay your employees, you're going to go on strike. It's just an absolutely fantastic game. And Kitchen Rush is a game that I actually think works better the more players you have. So it works technically 1, 2, 3, or 4, but 4 is like maximum chaos. The most possible people who are trying to get everything done at once. It has the most potential to create chaos, but also the most potential for you to kind of delegate tasks and figure out how each of you can kind of get your role done in the kitchen to get all the orders filled and win the game. Okay, up next we're going to have a pretty big jump in complexity. The first 3 games on the list I think are great lighter 4-player games, kind of my preference of, hey, let's play something fast, doesn't take too long, keeps it moving. And then there's many medium weight games that I like, but I prefer them at 2 and 3 players. They're not bad at 4, I still like them, but like I said earlier, maybe they're a little too long, maybe too much downtime, or maybe just not enough head-to-head direct competition when you get to the 4-player count. But there are a few medium heavy games that just sing. They just really soar and shine when you get to the 4-player count. The first of these complicated games is Dune Imperium, and Dune Imperium is such a cool blend of worker placement. It's going to be a lot of spots on the board. We're going to be doing things like acquiring more money, or acquiring some spice, some resources, or some influence with different factions. But then also you're going to have deck building. You're going to have a deck of cards that are going to basically determine what spots you can go to, but also as you get better cards, give you a whole bunch of cool bonuses. There's also going to be battles at the end of each round, and basically all the players are racing for 10 victory points. The first one to 10 victory points wins the game. Now, Dune Imperium is a game that, at least for me, maybe more so than any other game of this complexity, I really want to play it at 4. There's enough players that you all can go for very different strategies. You can really have all this competition where you don't know what's going to happen in the war at the end. If you're playing 2 players, maybe be able to kind of tell, okay, this person probably can do this. I probably need this many troops. It's hard to know that when you're playing 4 players, trying to track what everyone else is doing at all times. But it really makes that battle for every victory point more unpredictable. But that's good because you're really trying to just scratch and claw for every single victory point out there, but everyone else is too. So again, I really don't even like the game that much at 2. It's fine. I mean, it's okay. It's a decent game at 2, but I probably would play other games instead of it at 2. 3 is pretty good. I liked it, but 4 is absolutely excellent. Now, the final and the most complicated game on the list is Root. How it works is you have 4 different factions of woodland animals all fighting, all vying for control of the forest, and each of them works differently, but you're going to be scoring points by building buildings, recruiting armies to attack your enemies, trying to drive them out of zones. But what makes it so cool is that each one of those 4 factions behaves completely different. It's not just a little asymmetric where, you know, one person gets to recruit an extra worker, this person gets a discount on buildings, but completely different. One faction has a board full of buildings, and the more buildings they build, the more victory points they score. But another person's not even on the board. They're just trying to get cards and cause revolts in certain areas. And when they cause a revolt, they can take over a zone. Now, while Root does work well at 2 and 3 players, it is by far best at 4 because you have all 4 factions out there the way they were originally intended, basically keeping each other in check. Basically, some factions are going to have some advantages about beating up certain factions, but they can't do that too much to one person because another person might take them out while they're doing that. So you have all 4 out there on the board at one time, just each person trying to find a little edge, find a way to victory they can do without the other 3 stopping them. And there you have my favorite games to play when I have exactly 4 players. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What are some of your favorite games that you think work great, work exceptionally well at the 4-player count? Let me know what those are in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next video.